You're ready to go.
Hangline de Janeiro!
Hey! Woo!
Who's that friend? Give a scream! Woo!
I try to make every episode of Driving with Gloves as unique as possible. Sometimes I dress up like I'm in the 1930s, which is actually the time the story of this episode of Driving with Gloves will start, but more to that later. Sometimes I wear wigs or whatsoever. None of this is going to happen in today's episode, but therefore I will not only drive, of course with gloves, but also fly without gloves, as you already could see. I mostly film the episodes of Driving with Gloves in Switzerland, but not only. I filmed also in countries like Germany, France or Italy, but this episode of Driving with Gloves is filmed in South America. I mentioned this country already twice, once in the episode about the 1937 Jaguar prototype and once in the episode about the Volkswagen Bulli or bread loaf, or as I will call it in this episode of Driving with Gloves, the Combi. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this episode of Driving with Gloves is about the fantastic story of Volkswagen and how it became hugely popular in the South American country of Brazil.
Oh,
Yeah.
please. How's the flight?
It was fantastic. I can only say to everyone, try this when you are in Rio de Janeiro.
How come the family?
Hey, thank you very much.
In case you thought that I was fooling you, I am really in Brazil. Behind me there is Sugarloaf Mountain, so it's not Lugano, it's really Rio de Janeiro.
Hi, my name is Cor and welcome to my channel Driving with Gloves. I always drive with driving gloves. Your question might be, why does he drive with gloves? And my answer is, why not? If you think about Brazil, you're always thinking about sunshine. But just until before, it was raining cats and dogs. Yes, I'm in Brazil, because I was invited by the local Fusca Club of Sete Lagoas. And these are the cars they have. In Brazil, this is called Combi. We call it bread loaf, or in German, Bulli. And this is the so-called Fusca. It's hugely popular here in Brazil. It's called in German Käfer, or in English the Beetle.
But I'm not telling you the whole truth, because the Beetle, which is the Fusca in Brazil, was officially the Type 1 Volkswagen, and because of the importer of Volkswagen in the Netherlands, Ben Pon, the Type 2, the Transporter, which is called Combi in Brazil, was developed afterwards. But the story did not start in Brazil, but in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. In 1907, Bela Victor Karl Barényi was born in Hirtenberg near Vienna. He would become, during his life, a very important car engineer. The man played a huge role in automotive safety, and that's generally what he is remembered for today, because he had registered more than 2,500 patents. But there is one safety patent Barényi didn't register.
The owner is very smart, because we also made this on the bumper. And if the exhaust is getting hot, this will catch fire.
But why did I tell you the story about Barényi and his patents? Because he has never worked for Volkswagen, but for Mercedes-Benz. And that is the reason why all Mercedes cars had such high safety standards. I will explain it to you now, what Barényi has to do with Volkswagen. Well, let's start from the beginning.
There were besides Barényi 2 other people from the Austro-Hungarian monarchy involved in the early days of Volkswagen. One was Adolf Hitler and the other one was Ferdinand Porsche. Both were born in the 19th century and not like Barényi, born in the 20th century. So they were way older and more powerful than Barényi. In 1930, only 500,000 cars and lorries were registered in Germany, way behind France or Great Britain, where more than 1.5 million vehicles were registered. In the USA, there were even 26 million vehicles registered. The moment Hitler got to power in Germany, he knew of the importance of individualistic automobility. Mass motoring was a part of the Nazi propaganda, as the Nazis pretended to have invented the Autobahn, which simply isn't true.
When I saw this gear lever, I thought at first that it was a sequential gearbox, but it isn't. It is a shortened gearbox specially made for this Fusca. You have first gear in front, then the second one, you have the third one, the fourth, and if you want to go to the rear, the reverse gear, you put it like this. No, not like this. Or you too fierce. Yeah, something like that. Okay.
A cheap car needed to be developed for mass motoring, which was called Kraft durch Freude, KDF, which means strength through joy. Hitler knew about Porsche's talent, so he hired Ferdinand Porsche to develop a people's car, a so-called Volkswagen. Porsche even went to the United States to meet Henry Ford and learn how mass production of cars work. Porsche had only 10 months to develop a car like that. Parameters were space for 4 people, a top speed of 100 km an hour. It should consume no more than 7 liters of petrol on 100 kilometers and should cost only 990 Reichsmark. No easy job for Porsche, who was already very occupied. This all got financed by people who invested in the new KDF car, which they would never become.
I showed you this Fusca, but I didn't know that it had such a nice interior because it was very dark.
I already interviewed the owner of this car, who is the president of the Fusca Club of Sete Lagoas.
As you can see, I always bring my gloves with me, because even in Brazil I drive with gloves. This is Magela. He's the president of the local Volkswagen club. Pleased to meet you, Magela. I will take off my gloves. Pleased to meet you. Could you tell me something about your car?
Esse é o meu Fusca 1974, motor 1300. É um carro que eu mantive o motor original. Eu fiz algumas adaptações nele porque eu uso esse carro para viajar. Então viajo constantemente com a minha família nesse carro. Eu fiz algumas adaptações, mas optei por manter o motor original 1300.
If you look at Porsche's first attempt to build a Volkswagen, the so-called tuned-up Porsche Typ 12 has not a big similarity with the Beetle. But already in 1925, the 18-year-old Barényi designed the Beetle. Still a student at the Vienna's Technical College of Mechanical and Electrical Engineering, Barényi sketched something amazing. This was around 1925, 13 years before the first Volkswagen would be launched. One sketch was about his vision for the chassis of a people's car design, in German a so-called Volkswagen. The chassis design is incredible because of how close it is to the finalized Volkswagen chassis that finished development about 13 years later in 1938 by the famous Ferdinand Porsche, also born in the Austro-Hungarian Empire. All the key qualities in Barényi's design are there: a backbone chassis design, a horizontally opposed air-cooled engine mounted just behind the rear wheels and connected to a transaxle gearbox that powers the rear wheels. Aside from some minor differences, the similarities of this 18-year-old boy's imagination to what would become the largest selling single-platform vehicle of all time are absolutely remarkable. And remember, until that time, no one had ever designed such a similar layout.
I must admit that this is the first time in my life that I drive a Fusca Beetle. I have driven different Bredlows in the past, but I've never actually drove a Beetle. So this is quite extraordinary to drive a Beetle and then to be here in Brazil, the land of the Fuscas. So I'm very pleased to do that.
But the similarity of Barényi's design of 1925 with the later Beetle doesn't stop at the chassis. Barényi's overall design for the body and layout of the car are also remarkably like what would end up in production from 1938 till 2003 at VW factories all over the world. It looks like if Ferdinand Porsche in his time pressure copied Barényi's design. Bela Barényi became the Beetle's intellectual father, a term Volkswagen legally agreed to in 1955, even when he was only an 18-year-old student way back in 1925. What I've noticed in Brazil is that the people have a great bond with their Volkswagen. They do not have this obsession to keep it all original, but they personalize their cars. Sometimes it is the interior which is personalized, or the engine which is tuned. Sometimes it is, for example, a red look exterior. All is accepted here in Brazil. The later combis even have water-cooled engines, and the combis were produced until 2013.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to introduce you to Vito.
Hello.
He speaks even English. He was actually the one who introduced me to all the people from the Fusca Club, Sete Lagoas, because he has this wonderful combi and also this excellent Fusca with a great sound.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell something about how your passion started?
Yeah, I will try to say, and my passion started when I win this car, and my grandfather gave me. He owned maybe 10 or 12 years ago, and I started to make him, but I only have the chassis and the rims and nothing, nothing, and I have to beginning to try to find all the stuff to put my car to ride, you know.
Okay, so did I understand it correctly? Your father gave you the first Fusca?
My grandfather.
Oh, your grandfather. Okay,
My grandfather.
your grandfather. And then you had to build it up from the start. You only had the chassis and you only had the wheels, and you had to do it all by yourself.
And I go to this Ferro Velho, this for you buy the old stuff from the other cars.
Okay.
And I have to buy everything, like build my interior, the wheel, the doors, and then my car is like Frankenstein, you know.
He owns the Frankenstein's car. Okay.
As I told you before, until 2013 the Volkswagen Transporter, called Combi, was still built in Brazil. It is still in use by many people and companies in Brazil. The T2 Combi would probably still have been in production if there would not have been a new law in 2014. Every new car in Brazil needed to be equipped with ABS and airbags. This was the death penalty for the Combi, but Brazilians still love their Combis as they love their Fuscas.
Gianpaolo,
That's here.
this is Gianpaolo. He is the owner of this Combi. Can you tell me something about your Combi?
Uma Kombi 91, eu uso já há 6 anos para transportar a família, eu tenho 4 filhos e a Kombi tem cama, rebaixada, caixa alongada, é uma Kombi preparada para viajar.
Gianpaolo was so nice that he invited me a few days later to his house, and his wife, who has an incredible sense of balance, gave me as a gift this Fusca. During my stay in Brazil, I traveled more than 1,000 kilometers, of which around 700 kilometers alone by car. In advance, everyone had told me how dangerous it would be and that it would certainly get robbed. My experiences are completely different. From day one, the people were very kind and helpful to me, so completely the opposite of what I had expected. (1953) was the year that the Mount Everest was conquered by Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay. It was the same year that Volkswagen do Brasil was founded. The government of Brazil prohibited the import of complete cars to Brazil. Many Germans were prisoners of war. Hitler and Porsche went to jail in France. Also, a war prisoner was the first president of Volkswagen do Brasil, Friedrich Schulz Wenck. He emigrated from Germany to Brazil in 1950. But the question remains, how did Volkswagen come to Brazil? Volkswagen started as Hitler's KDF-Wagen. Even a new Motown was built in the north of Germany to build this car, which is now called Wolfsburg. The people of Germany were fooled in the 1930s by investing in a car which they never would receive. Therefore, the Kübelwagen, Typ 82, a modified military Beetle, was built. The Nazis lost the war, so the Third Reich did not exist even close to the 1,000 years which were planned. It is said to be proven that Hitler committed suicide within 24 hours after his wedding with Eva Braun in Berlin. But there is also a rumor that Hitler fled to Colombia and lived on under the name Adolf Schüttelmeier. Fact is that many high-ranked Nazis, mostly with the help of the Catholic Church, fled to South America. Who knows if this was also a reason Volkswagen started the production in Brazil, because Eichmann worked for Mercedes-Benz, the beloved car maker of Hitler, in Argentina. After he was captured, Mengele, who also lived in Argentina, fled to Brazil, where he died a natural death in 1979. Further did Stangl work for Volkswagen Brazil. Volkswagen has been involved in many scandals since its existence, and not only in Brazil. Remember the Dieselgate of 2015, but if you see the exhaust fumes of lorries in Brazil, which are not Volkswagens, then you must perhaps overthink that scandal.
Can anyone explain to me why Volkswagen doesn't produce lorries like this in Europe? Because here they are all around. It's very strange, isn't it?
Fact is that Volkswagen do Brasil has been extremely successful in the last 70 years.
Also, beautiful VW cars like the SP2 were developed and built only in Brazil. And since the Type 1 Fusca was so popular, also cars like the Puma GT or the MP Lava were built based on the Fusca.
Thank you very much for watching this episode of Driving with Gloves from Brazil with the Brazilian Fusca. Special thanks goes to all the people here in Brazil who helped me to realize this episode of Driving with Gloves about the Fusca, especially the Fusca Club of Sete Lagoas. See you soon in a new episode of Driving with Gloves.